What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a reaction to the Beach Boys' second studio album, Surfin U.S.A., brought to you by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Carl. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. We couldn't do it without the patrons. If you'd like to give a one-time donation, one-time reaction, any of that good stuff, check out our Buy Me a Coffee page, also linked below. Well, last month we did the debut album, so now we're going to move on. We're going to do the first 10 albums for Carl. Check out the Beach Boys playlist. You can find everything from the Beach Boys in there. I shared in the last video. I'll share real briefly. I don't know a lot about the Beach Boys. I mean, we've done Pet Sounds. We've done a few other things. But I've never listened to their catalog like this. It's long overdue. So looking forward to doing this. All right, let's jump into this album. I already mentioned its second studio album, released on March 25th, 1963, of course, on Capitol Records. Reached number 2 in the U.S., during a chart stay of 78 weeks, eventually being certified gold. Brought the group newfound national success. In the UK, it wasn't released until late 1965, so about 2.5 years later, reached number 17. The majority of the album's recording commenced in the first week of 1963, 3 months after the release of Surfin Safari. They are really, like back then, albums were churned out, and these boys are going to churn out a ton of albums in a short amount of time. Like the group's debut album production was credited to Capitol's representative for artists and repertoire, Nick Vanette. Although band leader Brian Wilson was heavily involved in the album's composition, many people say he produced basically all of it. The album marks the beginning of his practice to double-track vocals, resulting in a fuller sound. In 1990, Brian reflected on Surfin U.S.A. in the liner notes which accompanied its first CD issue. This is what Brian said about this album. By the time I got to the album Surfin U.S.A., I was more experienced at producing because he's also producing other people. The album Surfin Safari was practice for me. This album showcased our voices. We were just kids, but we were serious about our craft. The point being that when you are given the chance, you do your best. I think that I was a good coach for the boys because he's a little bit older than him. I didn't like second-rate vocals. It was either the best or nothing, in my opinion. The boys picked up. We had a good understanding between us, and I was their leader. We got it done relatively fast in the studio. On this album, we had gotten into a fast-paced, almost athletic in nature. It was because Surfin U.S.A. was such a smash hit on the radio. It was a big time for us. Production-wise, this album was an early Brian Wilson production, end quote. All right, I'm not going to have the music in the video. I'm actually going to try. It's a very short album, 12 tracks, under 25 minutes, just like the debut album was as well. But I'm going to try to keep the music in here. But if it starts and you don't hear the music, check out the Vimeo link below. It'll all be right there. Let's jump into it. Well, just like Surfin Safari, this one's going to open up with the title track, Surfin U.S.A. Songwriting credits, and we'll get to that in a second, to Brian Wilson and Chuck Berry, Mike Love singing lead vocals. Rewritten version of Berry's Sweet Little 16, set to new lyrics written by Brian, and an uncredited Mike Love. It's a whole nother story. I'll touch on some here. The song was released as a single on March 4th, 1963. Backed was shut down. Number 3 in the U.S., but it ended up being the number 1 song of the year on Billboard magazine because it's not just how high you are, but how longevity, right? How long that thing stays in. So it ended up being the number 1 song in 1963. 34 in the UK, but that was their first hit in the UK. It's since become emblematic of the California sound, and the song's depiction of California is emblematic of the genre, right? One feeds the other. Part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. According to Brian, quote, I was going with a girl named Judy Bowles, and her brother Jimmy was a surfer. He knew all the surfing spots. I started humming the melody to Sweet Little 16, and I got fascinated with the fact of doing it. And I thought to myself, God, what about trying to put surf lyrics to Sweet Little 16's melody? The concept was about they're doing this in the city, and they're doing that in this. They're doing this in this city, and they're doing that in that city. So I said to Jimmy, hey, Jimmy, I want to do a song mentioning all the surf spots. So he gave me a list. With this idea, Surfin U.S.A. uses a comparison of California to the rest of the U.S. to drive its stereotypical images of California. Additionally, it uses a recognizable, steady, upbeat drum tempo seen in many surf rock songs that seem to drive the music forward. The Beach Boys popularized the staccato drum style, and it's reminiscent of a locomotive getting up to speed. This technique was seen earlier in Jan and Dean's 1963 hit Surf City, which is the first surf song to achieve the number 1 position on the Billboard Hot 100. When the single was released in 1963, the record only listed Brian Wilson as the composer, although the song was published by Arc Music, Chuck Berry's publisher. Later releases, beginning with The Best of the Beach Boys in 1966, listed Chuck Berry as the songwriter. Later releases list both writers, although the copyright has always been owned since 1963 by Arc Music. Under pressure from Barry's publisher, the Wilsons' father and manager, Murray Wilson, had given the copyright, including Brian's lyrics, to Ark Music prior to the release of the single. They didn't want to get sued, right? In 2015, Michael Love stated that Surfin' USA was one of the Beach Boys songs he helped write, for which he did not receive credit. However, it's been difficult to quantify his contribution, as Love has in the past claimed that contributing 2 to 3 words to a song represents a songwriting credit, but the courts do see it that way, by the way. Love claimed he wrote the lyrics to the song, was not able to be credited in a successful lawsuit against Wilson and Alamo Irving Music in 1994 because the copyright was owned by Ark Music, and he had just sued the one that the Beach Boys normally use. So he went back and got songwriting credits on a lot of stuff. You can go search that story if you want. It's interesting. In a 1974 radio interview, Brian said, quote, "When we first got going, Mike was a Chuck Berry fan, so he and I turned the lyrics into a surfing song." So, I mean, it's pretty hard to win that lawsuit when you've got Brian saying that. All right, I'm going to the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Carl. All right, Surfin' USA. Is this their most famous song? I don't know. It's got to be up there, right? It's got to be up there. Fantastic song. You know what, the second you hear it. This was double tracked, so their lyrics sound much more full and pop and great harmonizing. I would almost guarantee you Brian Wilson produced this song. I would bet a significant amount of money, even though he's not considered the producer of the song, that he produced this song. Next up, we got Farmer's Daughter, written by Brian and Mike Love, sung by Brian. Fleetwood Mac originally recorded a cover of this for their Tusk album, but it didn't come out on that album. It came out on the remastered version in 2004 as a bonus track, but it was in 1980 on a live album that they did from the live album from Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. But guitarist Lindsey Buckingham played the song during the breaks, with Stevie Nicks occasionally joining in on vocal harmonies. Brian was a huge influence on Lindsey since he was a teenager, and Brian's brother at the time, Dennis, who was heavily into drugs, was dating Christy McVie in the band. The band spent 24 hours in the studios working on the track and later presented it to Dennis, who broke down in tears upon hearing it. So I don't have any research on this version, so I just thought that was cool. A lot of Fleetwood Mac on the channel. Brian touched a lot of people. All right, a song that was really just dominated by call and response. I mean, a lot of their songs are. This one really was in that realm. So, I don't have a lot else to say. Good song, nice harmonies. And next up, we have the first instrumental of a few on this album. We got Me Sir Lou, written originally by Nick Urbanus, Fred Wise, Milton Leeds, Bob Russell. It's a folk song from the Eastern Mediterranean region. The song's original author is unknown, but Arabic, Greek, and Jewish musicians were playing it by the 1920s, which is 100 years ago. Yeah, it's crazy. There are also Arabic belly dancing, Albanian, Armenian, Serbian, Persian, Indian, and Turkish versions of the song. It was a hit in the 1946 for Jan August, an American pianist and xylophonist, nicknamed the One-Man Piano Duet. It gained worldwide popularity. This is why the Beach Boys did it. Through Dick Dale's 1962 American surf rock version, originally titled Mr. Lou, which popularized the song in Western popular culture. We actually have that in a song battle that one of our OG patrons, CSN, did a long time ago, if you want to search for that on the channel. Various versions have since been recorded, mostly based on Dale's version, including other surf and rock versions by bands such as The Ventures and the Trashmen, along with this. Dale's surf rock version, of course, was heard in the 1994 film Pulp Fiction, which allowed him to record 4 new albums at that time, go back out on tour. He is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Many people don't know who he is. Influenced, they talked about it, Jimi Hendrix, Pete Townsend, Brian May, people loved him. Built an amp with Fender. This guy is an OG, man. So I'll be interested. This is just a pure tribute is why they did this. I can see why they did this. Let's check it out. Mr. Lou, even if you didn't know the name of the song, which I didn't when we did the song battle for this song, but I knew it the second I heard it. It's good. Here's the deal. They're still playing all their own instruments. Later on, the Wrecking Crew, who are maybe the greatest studio musicians of all time, come in and play on a lot of things, including Pet Sounds, of course, but a lot of things. And also, they're so young and they don't have any formal training, so they're getting better and better as it's going. But, over almost half this album, there's 12 songs, 5 of them are instrumentals. And I think most likely, I would almost bet money I just didn't find this. And, they're going to spout out these albums, every few months. And so you don't have enough time to write all this stuff and compose it. So throw some instrumentals that are in the same genre on there, and it helps fill out an album. This album's still under 25 minutes, so 12 songs, you got to get there. But they're not great musicians at this point. Right, the key to them is the vocal arrangements and the harmonizing. And so to have half the album be these, it's just interesting. I think they did an okay job on this, but this is a well-known song. You definitely have heard better. You can have another instrumental, but Brian actually wrote this one. We got Stoked. All right, Stoked, and they managed to say that every once in a while on here. It's still an instrumental. They're saying it. It's fine. They're saved a little bit on the previous song, Me So Blue, and this song, Stoked, by Carl. I mean, Carl's a pretty good guitarist. It's just when you stack him up against Dick Dale and people like that, it's tough to hang. The man is in his early 20s. So, all right, let's go to Lonely Sea, written by Brian Wilson and Gary Usher, sung by Brian. All right, Lonely Sea, much more melancholy and like, depressing sort of, in the ambiance of it than any song we've heard so far on the first album, and almost a half, because we're almost halfway done with this. So you're going to get a little glimpse of what Brian can do later on down the line. So I like that about this song. It had a different vibe to it, and I enjoyed it. I think it breaks up the album a little bit. Well done. And our last song on side A, we got Shut Down, written by Brian and Roger Christian, sung by Mike. Capitol Records released it again on the album Little Deuce Coupe, which we'll get to in a few months. The single peaked at number 23 in the U.S. and 34 in the U.K. Song details a drag race between a super stock 413 powered 1962 Dodge Dart and a fuel-injected 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. We'll have to have one of those, boys and girls, if you want to send one my way. Derived from a longer poem by Christian, so that's kind of how he gets songwriting credit. Song sung from the perspective of the driver of the Stingray, who brags that he will, quote, shut down the 413. In hot rod racing slang, shut down means to beat that person in a race. While the implications that the Stingray will win the race, the song ends before the end of the race with the 413 still in the lead, with the Stingray closing the gap. Although the race is often interpreted as having an inconclusive outcome, the lyrics in the outro refrain do state, quote, shut it off, buddy, now I shut you down, clearly indicating that the narrator in his Corvette Stingray, and in fact won the race, and he tells the Dodge 413's driver to shut off the car's engine and accept the fact that it has just been shut down. It's interesting, 409 was the last track on the previous album of the first side. So following a little formula here, title track's the first song on both albums, car track, the last song on the first side. Shut Down, a fun track to finish off the first side. Let's go to side two. Started off with Noble Surfer. Brian and Mike wrote it. Mike sings it. Noble Surfer, really talented. He's a Casanova. Kind of does whatever he wants. So fun song to start off the second side. Move to the first of several instrumentals on side two, Honky Tonk. Instrumental written by Billy Butler, Bill Dodgett, Clifford Scott, and Shep Shepard. Dodgett recorded as a two-part single in 1956. It became a signature piece and a standard recorded by many other performers. Peaked at number 2 for 3 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 and was the biggest R&B hit of the year, spending 13 non-consecutive weeks at the top of the charts. So people would have known this song. That's why I tell you that. 1972, James Brown recorded with his band, the JBs, who were credited as the James Brown Soul Train. The song was released as a two-part single, which reached number 7 in the R&B and 44 on the pop chart. All right, Honky Tonk. It's fine. It fits in with the vibe of the album and the sound, so I see why they chose it. Next up, we have Lana, written by Brian, sung by Brian. Nice song. It comes in between some instrumentals here, so well done. Signature sound. Enjoyed it. Now up to another instrumental, Surf Jam. This one written by Carl. Remember, Brian wrote Stoked, which was the 4th song on the first side. This is the 4th song on the second side. I'm telling you, man, these guys are using patterns. Let's go. All right, Surf Jam. Let's Carl get a little run here. Dennis will run here. Fits the theme. It's fine. I already talked about this guy back on Me So Blue, but we got Let's Go Trippin' from Dick Dale. Obviously an instrumental by Dick Dale and the Deltones. It's often regarded as the first surf rock instrumental and credit for launching the surf music craze. First played in public in 1962 in Newport Beach, California. It reached number 4 in the Los Angeles station KFWB's charts and later peaked at number 60 on the Billboard Hot 100, which these kinds of songs in 1960 were not doing that. All right, once again, fine. It fits the theme of the album. Let's go to the last track. Back to a vocal track, Finders Keepers. Brian and Mike wrote it. Mike sings lead. Finders Keepers. A simple song, but a nice way to finish this off. You had to finish it off with some vocals after half of the second side being instrumental, so enjoyed that. Now we get to my favorite tracks. Honorable mention, Lonely Sea. That song was a little more moody from Brian, and then the faves are going to be Shut Down, which ended side 1, and of course, my favorite, Surfin U.S.A. Now we'll get to my overall grade. This one's a little difficult to grade because 5 of the 12 songs are instrumentals. It's not always a bad thing, And it just comes down to the fact that they are putting major pressure on these guys. You know, it's a singles world we live in, and we're just releasing albums. Remember, albums weren't that important at this point in time. Pet Sounds, along with a couple Beatles offerings, Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band, are the albums that are really credited with bringing the album into being, the album as an art form. So we're not there yet. So they're having to fill this album up. So on that note, I still think it did a good job. I think it's more cohesive than the debut. So I'm going to give this 6.75 to a 7. You know what? Maybe we'll go with a 7. We'll go with a 7. It's enjoyable. Listen, I enjoy it more than what a 7 would be, although a 7's still a good grade. So don't come after me, Beach Boys fans, or maybe you should. I don't know. Let me know your favorites down below. What do you grade this album? Thanks again to Carl for bringing it. Until next time, guys, I will see you.